At 2:17 a.m., the abandoned lighthouse on Blackwater Point turned on for the first time in 34 years. That should have been impossible. The power had been cut in 1989. The lantern room had been stripped. The lens had been removed and placed in a maritime museum 2 towns away. And according to the county records, the lighthouse had been sealed after its final keeper vanished without leaving behind a body, a note, or a single footprint in the snow. But on the morning of October 6th, 3 fishing boats reported the same thing. A white beam sweeping across the sea. One long flash, one short flash, then darkness. One long flash, one short flash, then darkness. The old signal pattern of Blackwater light. Except that was not the strange part. The strange part was what the fishermen heard over the radio at the same time. A man whispering through static, "Don't follow the light." Then after a pause, "It knows when you're looking." My name is Elias Ward. At the time, I was working as a freelance journalist covering strange coastal history for a small documentary channel that paid badly, but let me chase stories no respectable outlet wanted. Missing lighthouse keepers, abandoned rescue stations, ships that appeared in fog long after sinking. The kind of stories people claim to laugh at during the day but listen to alone at night. Blackwater Point was supposed to be another one of those stories. A spooky local legend, a cold shoreline, a few interviews with old fishermen, maybe some dramatic shots of waves smashing against black rocks. Nothing more. I was wrong. Blackwater Point sits at the far northern edge of Maine, where the land narrows into a crooked finger of stone reaching into the Atlantic. The locals call it Widow's Finger. Official maps call it Blackwater Peninsula. Either name feels appropriate when you see it. The road ends 2 miles before the lighthouse. After that, you walk. No gift shop, no visitor center, no safety railings. Just wet grass, broken rock, and the constant sound of the ocean throwing itself against the cliffs. The lighthouse stands at the very end. White tower, black lantern room, keeper's cottage attached by a covered walkway. Everything tilted slightly from decades of wind. When I first saw it through the fog, I understood why people in town avoided the place. Some abandoned buildings look empty. Blackwater light looked occupied, not by a person, by attention. As if the tower itself had been waiting for someone to notice it again. I arrived just after noon with a backpack full of camera gear, batteries, a flashlight, a satellite phone, and the keys that the county clerk had given me after making me sign 3 liability forms. The clerk's name was Margaret Bell. She was in her 70s, with sharp eyes and hands that shook slightly when she slid the keys across the counter. "You're not staying after dark," she had said. I was planning to get night footage. No, I thought she meant it legally. She meant it personally. "I've lived here my whole life," she said. "My father was on the search party in 1989. They found his coat." "The keepers?" She nodded. "Samuel Gray, last keeper of Blackwater Light." "What happened to him?" Margaret looked toward the window, where gulls circled over the harbor. "They found his coat hanging in the lantern room. Boots beside the stairs. Watch on the table. Dinner still warm in the kitchen. But Samuel was gone." "No storm? Clear night. Any signs of forced entry?" She gave me a tired look. "You'll read the file and ask the same clever questions everyone asks. Then you'll go out there, and the place will make you feel less clever." She pushed the keys closer. "If you hear the foghorn, leave." "I thought the foghorn doesn't work." "It doesn't." I laughed lightly. She did not. Then she said, "And if the light comes on while you're inside the tower, don't look into it." That was my warning. I treated it like atmosphere. By the time I reached the lighthouse, the fog had thickened enough that the mainland had vanished behind me. The keeper's cottage door fought me when I unlocked it, swollen from damp and years of disuse. It opened with a groan that echoed through the empty rooms. Inside, the cottage smelled of salt, mildew, and old wood. Furniture sat under stained sheets. A cracked ceramic mug rested near the kitchen sink. A rusted kettle stood on the stove. Someone had once hung a calendar by the pantry. December 1989. The month Samuel Gray disappeared. I filmed everything. The peeling wallpaper, the narrow bed, the wood stove, the old radio desk with handwritten logbooks stacked beside it. I tried to sound calm for the camera. This is the keeper's cottage at Blackwater Point. The last official resident, Samuel Gray, vanished on December 18, 1989. Since then, the lighthouse has remained abandoned, though several local fishermen claim the light has been seen during fog. My voice sounded too loud in the room. I stopped recording. The silence after the camera beeped felt enormous. I found the logbooks on the desk. Most entries were ordinary. Weather, visibility, lamp checks, vessel sightings, maintenance notes. Samuel Gray had neat handwriting at first. October 3rd, 1989. Fog, late evening. Lamp functioning. 2 trawlers passed eastbound. Radio intermittent. October 9th. Lens rotation uneven. Reported to district office. Awaiting parts. October 16th. Heard knocking from lower gallery during storm, likely loose shutter. Then in November, the entries changed. November 2nd. Light observed offshore at 1:12 a.m. Not vessel, stationary. Vanished when signaled. November 5th. Radio interference during fog. Male voice repeating coordinates. Coordinates match Blackwater Point. November 9th. Dreamed the tower was taller inside than outside. November 13th. Found wet footprints on lantern room stairs. Bare feet. No one on site. November 17th. The light swept across my bedroom window. The lamp was extinguished. I turned the page slowly. November 22nd. Something in the fog answers the signal. The next several pages were blank. Then one final entry. December 18th, 1989. If the light turns toward the land, do not stand where it can see you. That was all. I read the sentence 3 times. Then the radio on the desk crackled. I stepped back. It was an old marine receiver, black metal covered in dust, with no power cord connected. The speaker hissed. A voice whispered through static. Elias. I did not move. The voice came again. Elias Ward. My first thought was that it had to be some local prank. Someone had seen me arrive. Someone was watching from the cliffs. Then the voice said, "You brought 3 batteries. 1 is already dead." My backpack was on the floor by the kitchen table. I opened it. 3 camera batteries. 1 had drained to 0. It had been full when I left town. The radio hissed. "Don't climb after sunset." I grabbed the camera and started recording. Who is this? Static. Then, someone who looked too long. The radio went silent. I stood there with the camera in my hand, breathing hard, waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. That was somehow worse. At 3:40 p.m., I entered the tower. The door from the cottage opened into a narrow circular stairwell made of iron and stone. The walls were wet with condensation. Rust streaked down from the bolts. My flashlight beam curled along the spiral steps until it vanished above me. The air smelled colder there, not simply cold, unused. I began climbing. Every step rang softly beneath my boots. Halfway up, I found the first mark scratched into the wall. A tally. 5 vertical lines. Then another set. Then another. By the time I reached the upper landing, there were hundreds of them, maybe thousands, scratched by metal, by nails, by something desperate enough to keep counting after counting stopped mattering. At the top was the lantern room. The county records had said the lens was gone. That was true. The great Fresnel lens that once magnified the lighthouse lamp had been removed decades earlier. Only its circular pedestal remained at the center, bolted to the floor like an altar. The windows were clouded with salt and grime. Fog pressed against the glass. Outside, the ocean was only sound. I set the camera on a tripod and filmed the empty pedestal. "This is where the lens would have been," I said. The county removed it after the station closed. Locals say the light has still been seen rotating from this room, despite there being no lamp, no mechanism, and no electrical connection. The camera screen flickered. For a moment, an image appeared in the viewfinder that did not match the room. The pedestal was not empty. A light burned at its center, white, intense, alive. Then the screen went black. The battery died. My second full battery. I whispered a word I won't repeat here. Then I heard something below. A door closing. From inside the cottage. I froze. Hello? No answer. The foghorn sounded. Low. Deep. Directly beneath me. The vibration moved through the tower and into my teeth. I gripped the railing. The foghorn at Blackwater Point had not worked since 1989. It sounded again. Longer this time. Then a voice echoed up the stairwell. Elias? It was my own voice. Not an imitation. My voice exactly. Calling from below. Elias, come down. I did not. The voice came again. This time closer. Elias, I found something. My own voice. My own cadence. My own slight breathlessness. I backed away from the stairwell. The lantern room windows began to brighten, not from outside, from the glass itself. A pale beam formed in the fogged panes and swept slowly around the room, though no lamp existed. When the beam touched the walls, the tally marks changed. They were no longer scratches. They were names. Samuel Gray, Aaron Pike, Thomas Lorne, Victor Hale, Mary Ellison. Hundreds of names. Most I did not know. Then the beam passed over the door. A new name appeared, wet and black, as if written from inside the stone. Elias Ward. I ran. I don't remember descending the stairs. I remember slipping twice. I remember the iron railing cutting my palm. I remember hearing my own voice above me now, calling down, "Don't leave me up here." I burst into the cottage. The front door was open. Fog filled the rooms. All the sheets had been pulled off the furniture. In the kitchen, the kettle was steaming on the stove. I had not lit it. On the table, one of Samuel Gray's logbooks lay open to a page that had been blank before. A new entry had appeared. October 6th. He came with a camera. He thinks recording is different from looking. I slammed the book shut. Then something knocked on the front door. 3 slow knocks. The door was open. No one stood outside. Another knock. This time from the inside of the pantry. I grabbed my backpack and ran out of the cottage. The fog outside was so thick I could barely see the path. The ocean roared somewhere below the cliffs. I followed the beam of my flashlight, keeping the tower on my left, trying to get back to the trail before darkness fell. But the trail had changed. It no longer led inland. It curved around the lighthouse. I followed it anyway, thinking I had lost direction. After 10 minutes, I saw the tower ahead of me. I had walked in a circle. I tried again. Same result. Every path led back to Blackwater Light. At 5:12 p.m., the sun disappeared behind the fog. Not set. Disappeared. The world dimmed all at once. The lighthouse tower creaked above me. From the lantern room came a soft mechanical sound. Gears turning. Metal warming. A lamp preparing to rotate. I looked up. The lantern room was dark. Then it blinked. One long flash. One short flash. Darkness. One long flash. One short flash. The beam swept out across the sea, then across the cliffs, then toward the land. Margaret Bell's warning returned. If the light turns toward the land, do not stand where it can see you. I threw myself behind a stone wall as the beam passed over the place where I had been standing. The grass hissed, not burned, hissed, as if the light had touched water. When it moved on, I looked back. The grass where I had stood was black, and in the blackened patch were 2 bare footprints, not mine. Facing me, I crawled behind the wall, keeping my head down. The beam continued its rotation. Each time it swept over the fog, shapes appeared inside it. People, standing just beyond visibility. Men in oilskins, women in old dresses, children holding lanterns, all facing the tower, all waiting for the light to pass over them again. My satellite phone had 1 bar. I called Margaret Bell. She answered on the 2nd ring. "You stayed," she said. "No greeting. No surprise. You knew this would happen. I hoped it wouldn't. What is the light?" There was a long pause. Then she said, "It isn't a light." I pressed my back against the stone wall as the beam passed overhead. What does that mean? My father said Blackwater doesn't guide ships away from rocks. It guides things in. What things? Margaret's voice shook. Things that get lost where the sea is too deep. Things that learn to follow signals. The foghorn sounded again. Through the phone, Margaret whispered, "Is that the horn?" "Yes." "Then it's already heard you." "What do I do?" "Get inside the cottage." "Are you insane?" "The beam is worse outside." What happens if it sees me? Margaret did not answer. The line crackled. Then a second voice came through, Samuel Gray's voice, though I had never heard it before and somehow knew. Margaret? The old woman on the line gasped. The voice continued. Tell your father I waited. Margaret began sobbing. My father is dead. Samuel's voice softened. So am I. The call disconnected. I stayed behind the wall until the beam moved away, then ran for the cottage. Inside, the air was warmer than before. The front door slammed shut behind me. The house smelled of soup, fresh bread, pipe tobacco. A fire burned in the stove. The cottage was no longer abandoned. It looked lived in. A coat hung by the door. Boots sat beneath it. A watch lay on the table. Dinner steamed in a bowl. Samuel Gray's final night. I moved through the room slowly. On the radio desk, the receiver crackled. Samuel's voice whispered, "Don't eat." I wasn't going to. The bedroom door creaked open. A man sat on the bed. Late 60s. White beard. Weathered face. Keeper's sweater. Bare feet. Samuel Gray. He looked at me with eyes that had seen too much light. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "I know." "No, you don't." He stood slowly. His body moved like a reflection slightly out of sync. "The light takes watchers first." "What is it?" Samuel looked toward the tower door. "An eye." The word made the cottage feel smaller. "Whose eye?" He smiled weakly. "If I knew, maybe I would be gone." The lamp in the kitchen flickered. Samuel flinched. "We don't have long." "Who's we?" "The ones it kept." He pointed toward the walls. For the first time, I noticed the wallpaper was covered in faint writing. Names, dates, coordinates, final words. Hundreds of them. The lighthouse was built on the wrong rock. Samuel said. "That's what my father told me. He heard it from his father. The point was avoided before the tower. Fishermen called it the blind shore because compasses failed here and men heard bells underwater." "Then why build a lighthouse?" Samuel laughed bitterly. "Because men think a warning sign makes a cursed place useful." The foghorn sounded. The cottage windows shook. Samuel grabbed my arm. "The beam will enter the house soon. When it does, don't let it touch your eyes." "What happens?" "You start seeing where it comes from." The lamp went out. A line of white light appeared beneath the tower door. Samuel shoved me toward the pantry. "Hide." I stepped into the pantry as the tower door opened by itself. A beam of light slid into the cottage. Not wide, not bright like normal light. Thin, searching. It moved across the floor, up the table legs, over the chair, across Samuel's boots. Samuel stood completely still. The beam touched his face. His eyes opened against his will. He whispered, "No." The beam entered his pupils. Samuel's mouth fell open. From inside his throat came the sound of waves. Not one wave. Millions. Then voices. People calling from far below water. That's Samuel. "Keeper, turn the light. Let us in." Samuel began walking toward the tower door. I stayed hidden, hands over my mouth. As he passed the pantry, he turned his head slightly and whispered without moving his lips, "Basement." Then he was gone. The tower door closed. The cottage returned to darkness. I waited until I could breathe again. Then I found the basement door beneath a rug in the kitchen. It was a square trapdoor with an iron ring. The wood was swollen and damp. I pulled. It opened with a sigh of air that smelled like seawater and rot. Stone steps descended into blackness. I did not want to go down there. But outside, the light swept across the windows again, and something in the fog knocked on the glass, not with knuckles, with something soft and wet. I climbed down. The basement was not on the county floor plan. It was much older than the cottage. Stone walls, low ceiling, pools of black water on the floor. The air was cold enough to hurt. My flashlight revealed shelves filled with jars. Inside the jars were small glass prisms, hundreds of them, some clear, some clouded, some faintly glowing. Each jar had a name written on tape: Samuel Gray, Aaron Pike, Mary Ellison, Victor Hale, and at the far end of the shelf, Elias Ward. The jar was empty, waiting. I backed away. My boot struck something metal. A hatch, not a door. A ship hatch, bolted into the floor. It was sealed with chains. On it, someone had carved, "Do not open for any voice." From beneath the hatch came knocking. 3 slow knocks. Then my mother's voice. "Elias?" My mother had been dead 11 years. I fell backward into the water. Her voice came again. "Sweetheart, it's cold down here." I pressed both hands over my ears. The hatch rattled. Chains tightened. The voice changed. "Margaret Bell." "Open it, Elias. I can help you." Then Samuel. "Basement." Then my own voice. "You have to see it to understand." The empty jar with my name began to hum. A thin line of light formed inside it. I realized then what the prisms were. Not glass, eyes, or pieces of ice. Parts of people who had looked too long. I grabbed the jar labeled Elias Ward and smashed it against the stone floor. The humming stopped. Above me, the lighthouse screamed. Not mechanically. Like something enormous and distant had felt pain. Water burst through cracks in the basement walls. The hatch chain snapped tight. The voice beneath it became many voices at once. "Look." The word hit the basement like pressure. All the jars lit at once. Hundreds of trapped lights turning toward me. I ran up the stairs as the basement flooded behind me. The cottage had changed again. It was abandoned now. Rotten. Cold. The furniture under sheets. No fire. No food. No Samuel. Only the radio working on the desk. It whispered. "Lantern room." I knew that was the last place I should go. So of course it was the only place left. The tower stairs were wet. Water ran down them from above, though there was no rain. The tally marks on the wall were now moving. Scratches becoming letters. Letters becoming names. Names becoming warnings. Don't look. It looks back. The sea has an eye. The light is a lure. At the top of the stairs, the lantern room door stood open. The room beyond was filled with white light. The pedestal was no longer empty. Something stood on it. Not a lamp, not a lens. An eye. Huge, white, round, wet. Suspended in the center of the room, rotating slowly, its pupil opening and closing like an aperture. Every time it turned toward the sea, the beam swept across the water. Every time it turned toward land, something outside screamed. Samuel Gray stood beside the pedestal, hands gripping the railing, eyes bleeding light. He turned when I entered. "Why did you break the jar?" he asked. His voice was not his own. "I don't belong here." "No one belongs anywhere," he said. "That is why we need lights." The eye rotated toward me. I threw myself behind the rusted control cabinet. The beam struck the wall above my head. The stone became transparent. For 1 second I saw beyond the tower, not the ocean, not the sky. A black sea under a dead white sun. Countless towers rose from the water, each with a blinking eye at the top, and in the water below them moved things so large that my mind refused to shape them. They followed the lights, every flash, every signal, every watcher. Samuel stepped closer. "You came to record a story," he said. "Now the story has recorded you." The eye turned again. I reached into my backpack and grabbed the last thing I had, my camera. The third battery was somehow still alive. I turned it on and pointed it directly at the eye. The screen filled with white. Samuel screamed. The eye stopped rotating. For the first time that night, the beam froze. It pointed not at the sea, not at the land, at itself. Through the camera screen, feedback, light looking into light. The lantern room shook. The windows shattered outward. The fog outside ignited white. Samuel collapsed. The eye shrank, expanded, then blinked rapidly. One long flash, one short flash, one long flash, one short flash. Then darkness. The tower went silent. I woke at sunrise on the rocks below the lighthouse. My camera was gone. My backpack was gone. The satellite phone was dead in my pocket. My right eye would not open. When I touched it, my fingers came away wet with seawater. I stumbled back to town and collapsed outside the harbor office. The official report said I suffered exposure, head trauma, and severe dehydration. It said I likely hallucinated. It said the lighthouse never turned on. But 3 fishermen gave statements before someone convinced them to stop talking. They said that at 2:17 a.m., Blackwater light flashed directly toward the shore. One long flash, one short flash, then darkness. They said the beam did not sweep across the water. It searched the land. They also said they heard a voice over the radio. My voice, whispering, "Don't follow the light." I spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Doctors said my right eye had suffered chemical irritation from saltwater exposure. That was their explanation for why the iris had changed color. It used to be brown. Now it is pale gray, almost white. Margaret Bell visited me once. She stood beside the bed and looked at my eye for a long time. Then she said, "You saw it." I said nothing. She nodded like silence was answer enough. "They'll seal the lighthouse again," she said. "Will that help?" No. She placed something on my bedside table, a folded page from Samuel Gray's logbook. It had one sentence written across it in fresh ink. "A lighthouse does not warn the sea about the rocks. It warns the rocks about the sea." I asked what that meant. Margaret said, "Maybe Samuel knows now." Then she left. Blackwater Light was officially sealed 2 months later. Concrete over the doors, steel over the windows, warning signs along the trail. No trespassing. Dangerous structure. County property. 3 weeks after that, the light turned on again. This time, only for 5 seconds. One long flash, one short flash. A retired school teacher saw it from her porch. She reported it. No one investigated. A year passed, then another. I stopped making documentaries. I moved inland. I avoided mirrors when my right eye hurt, because sometimes the pupil did not move with the other one. Sometimes it stayed fixed on something behind me. Last winter, I received a package with no return address. Inside was my missing camera. Water damaged. Cracked. Impossible. The memory card still worked. There was only one video. It showed the lantern room. The eye. Samuel. Me. But the angle was wrong. The camera was not filming from my hands. It was filming from inside the light, watching me. At the end of the video, I raise the camera toward the eye. The screen fills white. Then the footage cuts to black. For 7 seconds, there is only audio. Waves, static, a foghorn. Then my own voice whispers, "He's looking now." The file ended there. I deleted it. Then I smashed the camera. Then I burned the pieces. That night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., my bedroom filled with white light. One long flash. One short flash. Darkness. I live 300 miles from the ocean. There is no lighthouse near my house. No tower. No foghorn. No sea. But when I opened my right eye, I could see Blackwater Point. Not in memory. Not in a dream. I could see it as if I were standing inside the lantern room. The tower was sealed. The cottage was dark. The ocean was calm. And on the rocks below, facing the lighthouse, stood hundreds of people. Samuel Gray. The missing names from the wall. Fishermen. Children. Strangers in clothes from decades apart. All looking up at me. Waiting. Then, from far below them, beneath the black water, something opened its eye, and the lighthouse blinked back. I have not slept through the night since. Every few weeks, I wake at 2:17 a.m. and see the tower again. Sometimes the people on the rocks are closer. Sometimes there are more of them. Sometimes one of them raises a hand and points inland. Toward me. Last night, the beam swept across my room. For 1 second, my wall became transparent. Beyond it, I saw the sea, black, endless, and a lighthouse standing where my bedroom door should have been. Its door was open. Someone inside whispered my name. Not Samuel, not Margaret, my own voice. It said, "Come keep the light." I am recording this because I need someone to know what happened at Blackwater Point. I need someone to know the lighthouse is not abandoned. It is occupied. It has always been occupied. And if one night you are near the coast and you see a lighthouse flash in a pattern that feels like it is meant only for you, one long flash, one short flash, then darkness. Do not count the seconds. Do not look for the tower. Do not answer the radio. And whatever you do, do not look directly into the light. Because the light is not trying to guide you home. It is trying to find out where you are.